Welcome back, fiber friends, to another episode of the Wooltogold podcast. Today is going to be more of a spend the day spinning with me. It's going to be less of a tutorial, more of a vlog, full disclosure. But we're going to be spinning this glorious hand-dyed mohair. This is mohair that I bought a whole 4-pound mohair fleece at, oh my gosh, what was it? It must have been New York Sheep and Wool. New York Sheep and Wool this year. I got 4 pounds of white mohair. Oh, the fleece, it's so perfect. I still have some of the white that I need to honestly scour further, re-clean, if I'm being honest with you, before I dye it. But this, I dyed, scoured, obviously I mordanted it, and then I also dyed it with logwood. I used logwood to dye this. Logwood was one of those first natural dyes that I ever used. I understand from a lot of people's perspective, logwood is not necessarily the most accessible natural dye, right? It's not something that's going to be a waste product in your kitchen. However, if you talk to a lot of natural dyers, a lot of them will tell you it is a really good intro to natural dyeing. It is pretty light fast and just dye fast in general. It doesn't run a ton if you mordant your fiber correctly and, you rinse your fiber as well. And I've also found that, it's a really spectacular color. The colors that I got in this batch, because I did mess around with, half of the bin or half of the container was, a little acidic, and then the other half was a little basic. And so the colors ran from a little bit of, more of, a navy purple to, kind of a grayish color to this, lighter, almost pinkier purple. But obviously you can play with the concentration and you can get really, really vibrant logwood dyes. I've done very, very vibrant batches in the past. I'm pretty sure this batch, when I dyed it, was an exhaust batch, if I'm not mistaken, which for an exhaust bath dye, I just think that I got a nice amount of color on this mohair, and I've been wanting to spin it out for a while, especially because it's really freaking soft. Kind of forgot exactly how soft this fleece was, and I kept on basing mohair is one of those things that when it's dirty, it does impact how silky it feels. If you've ever been wow, every time I get hand-dyed mohair locks, right, they're really silky, but then whenever I go to buy a whole mohair fleece at a fiber festival and I look at the fleece, it's not shiny, it's super dull. It's because of all the dirt and grease on the goat, because goats get into shenanigans. They get really, really dirty. And I will say, cleaning a mohair fleece is not for the faint of heart. Cleaning sheep fleeces in general, I think, is not for the faint of heart, because there's gross stuff in sheep fleeces, okay? But goats are just dirty. They're dirty like alpaca, but they're also greasy like a sheep. And so it's just, there's a lot that you're contending with. I will say it was a very stubborn wash, and it was more stubborn than I was expecting. So yeah, we're gonna be spinning all of this today. I have a ton of it. This isn't even all of it. This is just what I've fluffed up so far. There's a bunch down here that I didn't fluff up. I have a pile on the floor, not on the floor, it's on a notebook on the floor next to me, and I've actually started spinning one of the yarns already. So here's the thing, I have a lot of this, so I think I want to spin at least one skein where it's mostly mohair and it's just lock spun, and I think I'm going to keep it singles. Okay? And then the other two, I'm hoping to get at least 2 more yarns. I'm not going to spin just the locks by itself. I think you guys, if you've been with me for a while and you've seen a lot of our yarn drops, one of the things that I love to do is make a 2-ply yarn where I kind of intermittently spin sections of locks and put random locks in with another wool spin. Previously, some of my favorite bases have been Polworth silk for these types of yarns, because I think that Polworth silk just has such a nice shine to it that often complements and almost helps highlight the shininess of just the rest of the yarn as well, the locks, because oftentimes locks are very lustrous. So the first base that I mixed together is once again from this lovely bag of wool that my friend Emily got me. I just thought this would be a fun, I don't know, color experiment that we could do, because I have this really nice pale, these are a really nice, I've been calling it a gray lavender. That's the color I've been referring to it as while I'm looking up different color schemes that I can play with. So this color scheme is kind of more of what I would call an analogy analogous color scheme, right? Yeah, I think it's an analogous color scheme because it's similar to the colors that are actually in the locks of the mohair. But I'll admit, while I was making these like cute little mini bats for this first yarn, I was already wanting to play with more of these colors, and I'm thinking of maybe doing another one with like these pale sagey greens. I'm going to add a lot of white to this as well. I really want it to be kind of like paler and washed out, but these are the colors I'm kind of thinking of making mini bats with. I also think there's going to be some mini bat making in this episode in general because I have just been in the mood. I kind of want to make some bats. I want to spin some bats. I want to make some mini skeins that I can drop on the next site drop. Because I always get people who are like really weird about the mini skeins. Whenever I show them off online, people are like, what are you gonna do with those? Like, why do you even list them? Why do you sell them to people? But then I list them and lots of people buy them. They're actually usually one of the yarns that like leave my collection the fastest. I think because they're like usually pretty affordably priced because the yardage isn't super high, so I didn't have to spend as much time or effort spinning it as something that is like hundreds and hundreds of yards. I feel like that makes sense. And so maybe I should just not listen to the haters and I should just list a few mini skeins. By mini too, I even mean like usually they're at least 100 yards, or like 70 to 80. I feel like that 70, 80, 100 yards is usually where my like mini skein range is. Anyway, let me show you these singles and then let's go make some bats. I feel like that's what I'm in the mood for today. I have readjusted our setup. I have collected all of the ingredients for the bats, or at least all the ones that I can find easily accessible. I know there's more stuff around here, but honestly, I'm just trying to get some of my collection a little bit more, some of my ingredients, right? A little bit more spinnable. They are not liquid yet. They're like solid assets that I'm kind of just hulking around that I can't even do anything with yet. And so we're trying to get some of that all carted up and prepared. So I'm gonna kind of like lower you guys down a little bit and show you the setup. Please don't judge how this room looks right now, all right? I'm trying my best. These are some other scraps that I found that I would also really like to add to the bat. So this, I remember, is from a Nouveau bat that I got a while ago. There's a little bit of Navajo churro, there's a little bit of sparkle, and just some like fun little add-ins. Then I also found this really nice green. I'm pretty sure this is Tussa Silk, the like really sagey green, and I think this is just the remnants of another bat. All of that is gonna get blended up with some Gulf Coast native. I do have just a little bit of this fleece left, and so I'm gonna try to incorporate it into this bat to kind of like pale out the colors because that's how I kind of want them to look. I want them to look a little bit washed out. Let's get to making this bat and see how it comes out. Okay, so in classic Brian fashion, it is the next day. I'm sorry, I'm just never gonna be the kind of person who films, like, making each individual bat. It's very tedious to me, and making bats kind of just, like, I don't know why, it's just, like, kind of a time sink for me already. So I filmed one of them, that's what you're gonna get, and you're gonna see all of the, like, finished bats that I made. This is a very small fraction of them, so this is the fraction of them that I am keeping, because I am selfish, and I kind of wanted to list all of these, but I decided that I am going to be keeping 3 of them. So these three that I'm keeping, I didn't name, but the rest of them that I'm going to show you that I made, I did name, and they are going to be listed on the shop in the next shop update. Okay, so this bat is Femme for Femme. This is very heavy on the Gulf Coast native, but there's also a lot of fine wool, tussa silk, art add-ins, so like neps, cotton, scraps, stuff like that. And then this bat is actually going to be paired with, it's going to come with 1 ounce of these logwood dyed mohair locks that I have, just because I'm going to be spinning a very similar looking bat with these mohair locks as well, and so this is gonna kind of be like a spin along with me, spin a similar yarn with me. It's gonna be a one of a kind. There's only gonna be one of them. But yeah, this is Femme for Femme. So this bat is definitely my second favorite of the bunch. This is Stone Butch Blues. I absolutely love this bat. It's just a whole lot of blue and a little bit of like deep purple as well. Lots of Gulf Coast native, some of it white, some of it that I hand dyed with logwood. That's going to be blended up with a ton of sari silk and tussa silk. Also some weaving selvage scraps that I had. A little bit of bamboo as well, and then stellina for a little bit of sparkle. This is probably my first favorite bat. I was very tempted to keep this for myself, just because this one, I immediately knew what I wanted to name it. It's named Whale Tails. If you don't get it, if you're one of the girls who don't get it, you're not gonna get it. But if you get it, you get it. I just thought this like 90s funky, like almost tropical color scheme seemed appropriate. There is a little bit of camel in this. There's no rare wool, but there is camel. That's the like fine luxury fiber in this. Otherwise, there's a lot of fine wools and it's a lot of silk. Once again, sari and tussa silk. And there is a little bit of bamboo in this as well. Next up, we have Cruising. This one also features rare wool, but it actually features some gray CVM wool that I have from Green County Wools. Very soft, very cushy, blended up with some dyed fine wools. There's Corriedale, there's Merino. There's also going to be quite a bit of sari silk in this one, no tussa silk in this one, just sari silk. And then you're also going to see a fair amount of Firestar to give it just a little bit of sparkle. And then the last bat that I think I'm going to be listing, this is Dykes on Bikes. I really like this bat. First, I did definitely pull from the lesbian flag color scheme for the base of it, and then I incorporated this really nice, like, cool bluish gray color with a little bit of stellina that I just feel like screams Dykes on Bikes. There's also some pink sari silk in this. It's a base of Gulf Coast native, so you're also going to get a fair amount of rare wool. As you can see, I definitely had like a theme running with a lot of these bats, and that's just the vibe that I was feeling. I've been listening to a new podcast lately. It's called Cruising Pod. The first season, you might have heard of it because the first season they were trying to visit all of the lesbian bars that were left in the United States. Since that point, they have had more seasons where they just cover like gay and queer history in general. Highly recommend. Every single episode, I find myself learning something. I find myself laughing. It's just a really interesting podcast that I recommend 10 out of 10. Is it once again about a week later? Absolutely. Okay, you guys know how I roll. I'm a busy man. Most days I do have to go to work in addition to, you know, trying to cultivate my art practice like I do. If anybody wants me to talk about being like a working artist more, I've seen a lot of discussion specifically on TikTok of people wanting to highlight like most artists, a lot of artists have day jobs. Those of us who don't, a lot of the times it's something that we have like specifically organized to be able to not work that year and like dedicate ourselves entirely to our art practice. Most of us don't really have the privilege to even carve out that kind of time for our practice. And so if people want me to talk about how I strike a balance between making art and fulfilling my dreams, and also genuinely paying my bills, then I would love to talk about it. But as always, it's up to you guys. But this is what I got done this week. So I did spin up this blue bat that I made with that really nifty sari silk. Look at the shine on the singles. I mean, there's a little stellina in there, as you can see, to give it some sparkle, but it's also just the bamboo and the silk really just came out super nice on these. I don't know what I'm going to do with these singles. I'm going to be so real. Like, in my dream, in my heart of hearts, I want this to be a 3-ply yarn. I think this would look like such a groovy 3-ply yarn. However, I don't have enough singles for that. Like, I don't want to chain ply it. I just don't think it'll have the same effect that I want it to. And so I kind of have to apply it to something else. I kind of have to turn it into, I don't really want to make it a 3-ply where only one of the plies is an interesting color, because I've made those before and I'm just never like in love with them. They're not usually my favorite yarns. So it is banished to become a 2-ply, which is fine, but deciding what kind of 2-ply has been really difficult. Like, should I spin another sort of like even ply? I don't really want to ply it with brown. As much as I love plying things with like a neutral or like an undyed color, and I have a lot of brown right now, I don't want to apply this to brown because I feel like it's already kind of dark. And I just think applying it to something lighter, maybe? I don't really know. I don't really know. I'm gonna decide at a later date. I'm literally gonna just like save these singles and not do anything with them, which sometimes I do. Sometimes I immediately apply them into another yarn. Just kind of depends on how I'm feeling. And then this is the yarn that we were actually spinning that I finished applying. I turned it into a 2-ply. I do think like this is a glorious yarn. Look at how beautiful that is. I just think there's a lot to look at. It's really interesting. The colors came out really nice. I have all of the deets written down on the tag already. I'm calling this one Full Moon Mist. It's a local, hand-processed and naturally dyed mohair, and a mix of fine wools. It's approximately 38 yards, so the yardage is not insane, but as you can see, this is a really thick yarn. Like, I'd say probably super bulky, at least bulky. And again, it's a 2-ply. I spun it on the shaft. It's that 9-to-1 ratio. I think it served us really well. I think I'm gonna spin that green Batt that you can see in the background with these other like set of mohair locks in a slightly lighter weight. So I'm gonna spin it on like a 10.5-to-1 ratio, and see how the size compares between the two of them. But that's gonna be for later in the week. The last things I wanted to show you guys, the last thing that I'm gonna show you guys in this episode is the fact that I did cast on a new whip. Full disclosure, it is gonna be Super Bowl halftime show themed, okay? I have to do some kind of crochet piece on the halftime show. If you don't think that halftime show is going to be talked about for literally decades, it's going to be analyzed for decades, I don't know, man. You missed something. You missed something. I'm really excited about this. This is the, like, kind of first portion of the project. So, like, once this portion is done, it's going to look like a finished piece by itself, but I'm going to be adding more to it. So this portion is going to be literally like a big crochet TV. I'm going to add, like, 2 little antennas on the top. The background of the TV to kind of give it like almost like a staticky effect. That's kind of what I'm shooting for. I'm using this Rave, it's called Rave, right? Yeah, Big Twist Rave, 100% acrylic. It just has this fun like neon and gray gradient that, again, I thought would give me kind of a like static effect in the background. And then I'm going to be doing some color work text in an assortment of colors, but this first portion is going to say turn this TV off. Once that section is done, I do have plans to essentially like extend it out and make it like a big American flag with a lot of other color work and text work going on it. I won't go into all of the details right now because honestly it could be like its own separate video. All you have to know is that I cast it on, and it's looking pretty good already. I have over 10 rows done, so I kind of have a rough idea of like how much I am going to need to crochet in general to get the shape that I'm shooting for. And frankly, I really like the way the gradient is coming out already. I think it looks really neat. Anyway, that's all, folks. That's all I have for you for now. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you so much for all of you who have been watching my lint yarn spinning video. I really appreciate that. I really think it's probably my first video that's kind of like broken the barrier and kind of garnered some attention outside of like the immediate spinner circle, which is amazing. That's like so wonderful. I never thought I would kind of like get to that point, and honestly, like, it's one of those things where, like, I make content for spinners, so if nobody but spinners ever watches my content, that's totally fine with me, but I do think it's really cool that, like, all sorts of crafters are tuning in for that specific episode and, like, clicking that follow button and saying, like, they want to continue tuning into me. I really appreciate that. Thank you so much. I see you. I hear you. I will keep making really weird spinning content. I have plans for, like, a longer, weird spinning episode in the very, very near future, so keep an eye out for that. But anyway, again, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you guys on the next episode of the Wooltogold podcast.